Every nation tells a story about how it began. For America, that story usually starts in 1776, with quills scratching parchment, with the Declaration of Independence, with the promise that all men are created equal. It is a story of liberty, of defiance against empire, of a young nation born in revolution. But history has another beginning, one written not in ink, but in chains. That beginning takes us to the year 1619. In August of that year, a ship called the White Lion anchored off the coast of Virginia. On board were more than 20 Africans, taken by force from their homeland, traded for food and supplies, and sold into bondage. This was not the first time Africans had been enslaved in the Americas, but it marked the beginning of a system that would define the colonies and later the United States for centuries. The year 1619, long buried, long ignored, forces us to ask a haunting question. Is this the true beginning of America? For generations, schoolbooks taught children that America was born in Philadelphia in 1776. But the 1619 Project, launched by journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones, challenged this tradition, arguing that the story of America cannot be told without centering the arrival of enslaved Africans and the institution of slavery itself. The project ignited a national firestorm. Supporters saw it as an overdue reckoning with the truth. Critics called it revisionist history, an attempt to stain the founding ideals. Suddenly, classrooms, newsrooms, and even state legislatures were caught in a fierce debate about how history should be taught. Why does this matter? Because history is never just about the past. It is about identity, belonging, and the way a nation understands itself. If America begins in 1776, it is a story of ideals, freedom, independence, democracy. If it begins in 1619, it is also a story of contradictions, liberty proclaimed while liberty denied. Consider the paradox. While Jefferson declared that all men are created equal, he himself enslaved more than 600 people in his lifetime. Washington, Madison, and other founding fathers who spoke of liberty depended on enslaved labor. Cotton and tobacco, harvested by enslaved hands, became the backbone of America's wealth. The railroads, the grand houses, the booming ports, much of it rose from forced labor. Enslaved people were not outsiders to the American story. They were its builders, yet their names and lives were long erased. For centuries, the contributions of Black Americans were left in the shadows, while the myth of the Founding Fathers shone brightly. The 1619 Project sought to bring those shadows into the light, reminding us that Black Americans not only endured bondage, but also fought for freedom. Sometimes long before the Revolution, enslaved men petitioned for their rights, joined the Revolutionary War with promises of liberty, and inspired future generations in the struggle for equality. But why is this debate so emotional today? Because it is not just about what happened 400 years ago. It is about how that history lives in the present. The echoes of slavery are felt in systemic racism, in wealth inequality, in the debates about policing, education, and voting rights. To recognize 1619 as America's beginning is to admit that inequality was not an accident, but part of the blueprint. For many, that truth is uncomfortable. For others, it is liberating, because only by facing it can true progress be made. Opponents argue that the focus on slavery risks overshadowing the ideals that made America unique. They point out that the Revolution of 1776 created a framework, a constitution, and a Bill of Rights that abolitionists, civil rights leaders, and activists later used to demand freedom. Without 1776, they argue, there would have been no legal tools for emancipation or civil rights. To them, 1619 was a tragedy, but 1776 was a triumph. Both matter, but the nation's birth certificate remains the Declaration of Independence. And so, America finds itself at a crossroads of memory. What story will it tell future generations? The tale of liberty born in revolution, or the tale of bondage shaping a nation? Perhaps the answer is not one or the other, but both. Perhaps America's true story is one of tension between its ideals and its realities, between what was promised and what was lived. Think about classrooms today. In some states, teachers are restricted from discussing the 1619 Project. In others, it is embraced as essential. Parents, politicians, and communities battle over textbooks, worried that children might grow up with a version of America that either glorifies or condemns its past. But maybe the real power lies in teaching both, the soaring ideals of 1776 and the painful truths of 1619, side by side. Because history is not a monument carved in stone. It is a conversation passed from one generation to the next. It can be rewritten, reinterpreted, and retold, but it cannot be erased. And whether we like it or not, the story of America is incomplete without both its triumphs and its tragedies. The question is not whether America began in 1619 or 1776. The question is, what kind of nation does America want to be in 2025 and beyond? Will it cling to a single, simplified origin story, or will it embrace the complexity of its past? For in the end, America's true greatness has never been in pretending to be perfect, but in the struggle to become more perfect. The voices of 1776 dreamed of liberty,